Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Affinity Live webinar today. Today we're going to be looking at digital marketing, web design, and web development agencies and how they can use Affinity Live. So without any further ado, let's look at what Affinity Live is. So when we say PSA, we mean professional service automation. And what that means is that you can now take your customers and see what sales, projects, retainers, and tickets or service items you have that you're doing for them. So essentially, all of your customer work in one place. What's specifically powerful about Affinity Live on the sales side is that in one click, you can convert a estimate or a quote that you send your customer into a project. Now, when you're coming from a sales solution and then also a project solution, normally they aren't integrated and they don't sit together. So one of the biggest struggles that our customers have before coming to Affinity Live is, well, I promise something as a salesperson or on the CRM, and then I throw it over the fence to the project side and say, you know what, deal with this. I have sold this. I'm doing great. You can deliver on it. And that's not normally what happens. Usually, it's very tough for a project team to deal with something that came from the sales. So with the quote to project, we're seeing a lot more integration and conversation around the sales to close process, but also speeding up that sales to project delivery process. Next, we have what we call a sales playbook. What this allows your team to do is essentially take the process and the steps maybe on your head or on a chart somewhere and build it into your CRM. What this means is that not only are your salespeople going along the right process, they're also taking the right steps to closing. So when you move from maybe a qualifying to a proposal stage, you can have Affinity Live automatically prompt your salesperson to actually write the proposal, to update some fields regarding maybe the goals they have for a new project, and then book out and schedule meetings. And then lastly, on the CRM, we have native email sync with both Gmail, Office 365, or Outlook, so Exchange Server. So what this allows you to do is you can send emails directly from the CRM, and those will go to your customers. So all responses and back and forth will be recorded in Affinity Live, but will also go over to your email client. This will allow you to essentially go in both places and able to continue the conversation, but also from a management or team collaboration aspect, it's easier to see what your team is up to. So you can hop in on conversations, troubleshoot something that's happening. And this email sync goes across the board, but is particularly useful in a sales situation where there's a lot of collaboration that goes around actually selling. Next, we have projects, and projects are large multi-stage deliverables like a new website or a large implementation or a new product software that you're designing for your customer. And what's really nice about our projects is that we have live, both hourly and dollar amount budget tracking. A lot of PSAs or project management systems lets this information sit in the back where you can compare actuals versus what actually happened maybe a month out. What Affinity Live does is put it front and center so that you can essentially troubleshoot if something is about to go over budget and make sure and follow up to ensure that your projects are essentially delivering on time. Next, any project management software now, and what you should be considering is something with Gantt planning. Now, what this does is it gives you the structure to be able to lay out how you want your project to work and flow. We have both the Gantt chart for dependencies, but also be able to see what the dependencies are. And then lastly, a critical path. So let's say the project is speeding up or slowing down. Affinity Live is going to be intelligent in updating the fields and the due dates and everything that surrounds the delivery of the project to make sure that it reflects what's reality, not what you made up in your head right when you sold it and are trying to execute on a dream. And then we move to retainers. What retainers is in the agency has two sides. So one would be going through SEO, PPC, and maybe some link building, continuous campaigns that you're working with your customer on. So you can think of those as monthly items. Maybe I sell 6 hours of time every single month and want to bill for it. On the other support side, let's say that you implemented a website and you are looking to have a place to not only charge for the support and the maintenance, but also collect all that time that you're working on. So what you're able to do with a retainer is sell time blocks or track how much time, set recurring tasks. Now this puts a service aspect to what you're delivering. A lot of people are coming to us with an issue of saying, look, I have this website maintenance contract, but I don't know what I'm doing with it every single month. Or I have to build a whole entire new project every single month just to go through the 5 steps to maintain a website. What you can do with retainers is put in recurring tasks. So, for example, on the website maintenance, go to the DNS and make sure there aren't any restrictions. Clean up the overall structure. Maybe put more content on the website. On the SEO side, those recurring tasks would be customer meetings to review my strategy and how my keywords are trending. And then lastly, auto billing. So it's no more end of the month or a couple weeks after the end of the month, trying to get together all the time that you put together and send off your invoice. Affinity Live has a native sync with QuickBooks and Xero, which allows you to, at the end of the month, tell it to automatically create an invoice, and that will go over to Xero or QuickBooks. And if you want to record the payment on that side, that invoice will then come back into Affinity Live. And then lastly, we have services. So they call up with an issue on their website and something has broken down, or they've asked for some more content for you to write that's outside of your normal contract. You can record both ongoing work or ad hoc work through our services module. What's particularly useful from a ticket tracking perspective and actually resolving is that we have if-then triggers, which essentially allows you to, let's say a ticket is closed and the customer hasn't gotten back to you within 7 days and you're asking them to respond to you, then have it automatically send an email to the customer asking them again to confirm that the issue has been resolved. What this allows you to do is take a lot of the manual process of service delivery, or also a lot of the process that might be letting things slip through the cracks, and really build it into a service delivery that's consistent and will hopefully make your customers happy. Like the CRM on the sales process, we have a service resolution workflow where you can define the different stages and have certain items come off of a resolution workflow, like follow-up calls, automated emails, and updating essential fields to close the ticket. And then lastly, we have a team inbox, the request queue. So if anyone were to send a request or a ticket to your support at, in this case, hdmz.com, or if they went to the client portal and asked you to change something on a project or asked you to fix something on their website, you're able to have a team inbox. So it's no longer logging into one email and everyone trying to answer the questions in chaos. There's a very nice way for you to record what's going in, but also the time that's going into the emails going back and forth can be tracked. So when you convert that into a full-blown ticket, you've already tracked all the effort leading up to it. So those are the 4 different areas of Affinity Live that constitute the PSA. What we're going to look at today in particular is the projects module. And the case study we'll be using is HDMZ. So HDMZ is a digital marketing and web design agency. They were about 12 people when they joined Affinity Live a few years back. They are based out of San Francisco, but merged with a larger firm of about 30 out of Chicago. So they're in 2 remote offices, about 45 people right now. And they build and design websites for the healthcare industry. When coming to Affinity Live, that's what their system looked like on the right-hand side. And it's very, very common for our customers to be coming from something like they have time tracking in one area, project management in another, a CRM that's split across their email and some sort of sales lead process, and nothing really talks to each other. It's really hard to get information out of it, especially time information and project information to eventually invoice for. So when talking to HTMZ, they're saying that our team needed a lot of logins and often forgot them. So what that meant was there was a lot of low adoption across the board. People would gravitate towards one tool or often use another, and really it was hard to get them to adopt the other side, which made data entry and quality of that data really low. Another item from a functional standpoint is that nothing was talking to each other. So it was taking a lot of time and manual process to move time to invoicing, to move new sales to an actual project that you can start delivering on. So from a functional aspect, there was no integration between the different solutions. Now, those are the two pain points that a lot of people are looking for or are coming to Affinity Live for. But there's this other aspirational aspect of company culture and who we really are. And that is HDMZ felt like their designers and their sales team just weren't talking. And this goes across the board. Their accounts team wasn't talking to their sales team. Their dev team wasn't talking to their designers. So there's this aspect of transparency, and really it trickled down to the company culture. So those are the three things that HDMZ looked to address and that Affinity Live actually really did address when they came over. So this is HDMZ San Francisco. Now, it's not as female heavy as this picture suggests. There were a few men out to lunch, but it looks like David is pretty happy about this current situation. Who we're going to focus on are the three people on the left-hand side today. The first person is Janice, who is the project manager on the team, and we're going to see how she can set up a new website through Gantt planning, how she can monitor and troubleshoot issues through live budgets, and how she can look at her whole entire team and schedule them out for the project to make sure that things are being delivered on time. Next, we're going to go and look at David. And what he cares about really is just what he has to do and how long did he take on it. And that would be through his individual task board. When he logs in, he can see what he needs to do, and an automated timesheet for him to log time. And then lastly, we'll touch on some of the native two-way email sync in Affinity Live and how that makes David's life a lot easier in terms of collaboration, but also for logging time. And then lastly, we'll see how Rebecca, who's the VP of Ops, can utilize Affinity Live to not only get a very broad arching overview of what's going on, but quickly send invoices out when they need to be sent. So without further ado, let's hop into Janice. She has been working on this new website for Pluma medical devices for about a month now. And the website is for a medical device that's called Heart Plus, which is a new heart rate monitor. And they're building a landing page and a little bit of web app and graphics around it. So when Janice logs in every morning, she can see how all of the projects in the company are tracking and what sort of the pipeline value is on the right-hand side. Now, if she wanted to see just the projects that she's managing, she can always refine that down to some of the Pluma medical devices and Medtronic projects she's working on. So from a very high-level overview on Heart Plus, she can see from the traffic lights how things are tracking, if they're on time, and you know what? She has been doing awesome. Looks like the due is on track, and also the activities surrounding that. It looks like a lot of people are logging time, and there's a lot of collaboration around the project, meaning that things are probably going in the right direction. So let's see what this particular website looks like. So what we see here on this project plan on the left-hand side is an Excel type layout of the milestones and the tasks that constitute building a website. So for example, we have the requirements analysis, design, and all the items that fall underneath the design, such as concept mapping and sketching, then the implementation and the eventual rollout of training and support. On the right-hand side, we have the overall flow of how many days we expect items to take and what is dependent on each other. So what this allows you to do is very easily and nicely see and visualize how the project is going to track. And it also has a drag and drop interface if you want to move items around. Both tools for the traditional project manager on the left-hand side and then the more business digital-minded project manager, where there's a little bit more graphics and is easier and pleasing on the eye. Now, what Janice has noticed is that though we have training and support, it doesn't look like we have any client follow-up. And Janice is particularly interested in seeing, well, how did it roll out, and just to make sure that all the goals were achieved. So she's going to come in and quickly make a milestone and set up some tasks. Now, for this particular client meeting, she can do a few things, and this is where budgeting comes into setting up a project. Now, if we were to look up here, you're able to budget for time and materials. For example, sketches, concepts, and all the other tasks all trickle up to a high level dollar amount and hour amount. You're able to do fixed bid, where you just suggest how long I have to do certain items, and you put a fixed amount on the overall implementation in this example. And then we have an example of no task yet. And that would be if the sales team is just trying to push through a project and we haven't really scoped out the particular task, but on a high level overview, we have scoped it out, we can put that together. What you're seeing here is a lot of different ways to piece together and build a project in terms of how you want to invoice. So you no longer have to use a project management module or a tool and then pretend that that's how it actually gets invoiced for. You can build that all into this project so that when it comes time to invoice, the work that you're doing on the project and the invoice that you're about to send off match, which decreases the amount of time that it takes to send out those invoices and get paid. Now, to finish the actual assignment of the client meeting, let's assign this to Janice and put some time. And in this case, I'm going to set a budget. It's probably going to take an hour and 30 minutes for this meeting. And I'm going to use Janice's staff rate, which is, I believe, $150 or $180 an hour. I can also put a predefined task rate as well for the hours. This is just another example of the flexibility in how I can price out this particular task and also the project. So now that I've put the task into the project, you can see that it is floating down here, which it looks like it's a little bit too early to happen. It would most likely happen at the end of training. So I'm going to have the whole entire follow-up milestone be dependent on the end of training. Now, what this allows me to do is when it comes time to actually following up, how long the project actually took will then determine when the follow-up happens. So for example, if I were to deliver this project a little bit late, these dates would push back. So now that we have a follow-up and client meeting, let's see what it looks like on the project board. From this view, Janice can see all the items on the left-hand side that we put together in the project plan, but you can also see very pertinent information for usage. Now, when I was talking about live budgeting, this is where I'll be able to see both the tracking of dollars and also the tracking of time for both the high-level milestones as well as specific tasks that we're working on. Now, we've just started this milestone, so there's only 3 minutes used. And that was actually an email that Janice sent to David. But if we were to look at design, we have a bit more information. It looks like mockups went over budget. So it's very clearly showing and able to let Janice troubleshoot what's going on. So what we can see here is that, well, we have a start date of March 16th, but I just got off the phone with Jessica from Pluma Medical Devices, and we want to push this a little bit faster or make sure that the design that went over won't happen again. So what I'm going to do is, as Janice, go over to team scheduling and see who can help out David on this coding to make sure that we can move this process along. So what we can see from the team schedule on the left-hand side are all the items we need to do in this particular project. So if we were to scroll down to the implementation, we can look at this code out particular task and how much time is remaining. It's not only projects that you can see on the left-hand side. It also includes all the tickets, the retainers, so that recurring work that you're doing, as well as just a straight task list for your whole entire organization. So you can start doing items like looking at unassigned tasks and taking more of an agile approach to a backlog from the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is everyone's schedule, and this is across all projects. What we get is a really nice overview of how busy people are, and from there, able to then assign out work. So now it's Tuesday. It looks like David is actually pretty free for the rest of the week, but I know a few projects are coming through the pipeline because I've been keeping up on these sales opportunities, and I want to keep David's Thursday and Friday open as well as the next week because there's a very high level project that's coming through. This project isn't actually as high level, but we still need to finish it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this particular task called code out between Jessica, who has a very similar skill set to David, so that both of them can work on it this Wednesday to finish it by Thursday. So all I have to do is drag out this task, and I want to commit some time. So I want David to work on this particular task for 4 hours. And then for Jessica, let's have her work on the other half for 5 hours. So now I look to Jessica's overall schedule for Wednesday, and she has 6.5 hours of work, 5 of that being essentially helping David as a pinch hitter to deliver this project. And if I were to go to David, I could see that he has 4 hours committed on the code out project as well. Now you might be asking, green, yellow, blue, what's the difference? What does it mean? 4 hours committed means that this is absolutely happening for David. Whereas green means it's something that is auto-generated from the project and they are suggestions for something to do. So let's say that Janice wanted a block amount of time to code, maybe 5 hours each day for the next 2 weeks for a particular project. You can then set that up here from the team schedule. Then the last item that we have is yellow, which means scheduled. What's really powerful about scheduling is now that we can put specific times to do things throughout the day. So for example, on this Photoshop item, we know that we have a client meeting in the afternoon. We want Jessica to finish all the Photoshop so that we can present it to our clients. Now we're asking her to do it in the morning before that client presentation in the afternoon. So here's some few examples of how we can tactically move things around and assign them on a very granular basis, and how a project manager like Janice can move items around to make sure that we're delivering things on time, getting things done, but also leaving room or reassigning room for the higher value projects that are going to bring more money into our organization. So we're looking on days. Now let's move into the week view. From this view, we can see a very high-level overview of how busy everyone is. And when I was talking about bringing in new business and what's my team's overall allocation, I can start getting a really good sense here from the week view as well. Team scheduling isn't only for the granular moving things around, it's from a strategic and high level planning perspective as well. So that's the end of the Janice's part of the story, where she was able to put together a project plan, build out a fairly large project, and put down a foundation for something that we can execute, deliver on, and hopefully start managing larger projects. And then we also moved into team schedule, where she was able to move different items around and make sure that her team was staying busy and delivering on what she was managing. Now what we'll move over is to David, a web dev on HDMZ, and we can think of him as any team member who just wants to get in, see what he needs to do, log time, and get out. And what Affinity Live does is makes it really easy for them to log accurate time against the project so that you can bill more accurately or bill higher, and also so that David doesn't have to be bogged down by all the nitty-gritty details that are often surrounding projects. So when David logs in, he sees his task board, what he has to do today, tomorrow, and everything in between. Now, if you're familiar with Trello or Jira or any Kanban type style management, this should be very familiar. What we're doing is we're taking a more waterfall Gantt chart structured approach to project management and putting it in the hands of the team so that they can manage what they need to do. What we see here is code out. And Janice wanted David to do this on Wednesday, or at least have it due by Wednesday, but David is looking at what he has to do today and says, you know what, I don't have much to do today, so let's actually start working on code out. And all he has to do is drag and drop that to today. What he's just done is made it useful for himself to rearrange and put what he needs to do, and all that goes back and updates Janice on the project plan. Now, it's very useful for a task, but usually the login time and actually managing the tasks are in separate places. That's not the case in Affinity Live. There are two ways to really easily log time. One would be to create a timer. So what David can do is create this timer, have it sit down here, and actually move throughout the system. So he doesn't need to stay here on the task board. He can go directly to the overall project, have that running down below. But you know what? We're not bogging him down with too much information. He actually can't see that project, which is the way that HDMZ wanted David's case to be. So if David wanted to say, you know what, I've done enough HTML and CSS today, my brain's a little sore, he can come in and complete that certain task. Let's say that he actually worked on this for, let's say, an hour. So this timer down here is always running, but you can always overrun it as well. So as you can see here, 4 hours are now remaining on a 5-hour task. The other way David can log time is through an activity. And the example that we have here is Janice has actually sent David some code examples from a previous project that we've done with Pluma Medical Devices, just for usability and consistency across their whole entire website as they build a new product page for Heart Plus. So what David can do is he can come in here to this email that Janice sent him, and this would show on his Gmail or Outlook in HDMZ's case as well, and he can have full conversations back and forth, but he can also have conversations with Janice right here in the note thread. So now he can come in here and say, you know what, Janice, thanks, but might not be that relevant. Here's some of the direction that I think I would like to take. And what you can see here is we're essentially collaborating around the project. We're having full conversations, and often digital agencies aren't thinking about these small conversations. They know that there's a lot of chatter around a project. They know that they should be recording their email or any other sort of client communications, but don't have a sense of how much time it's taking. When we interviewed our customers and asked them how many emails and actually did a little bit of audit through Affinity Live on how many emails they're sending each day, we found about 300 emails are being sent, whether that's internal or client related emails. And only 50% of those emails are being recorded as something that shows up on their timesheet. What we have here is we don't have to think about all the time. Affinity Live is already proactively logging, and while I blabber away, the time keeps on going. So what this allows me to do is have both billable but non-billable time is able to record as well. But essentially what we're doing is we are tracking how much time items take and making sure that we're getting a really good sense of how much time it's taking. And now if David were to go back to his task board, he would see a little bit more time fill up. Not that he's moving really that much in any direction, but he may be moving a little bit on this particular project. Oh, and it looks like he actually made a mistake. He logged 3 hours on that particular email instead of 3 minutes. So perfect. We can move to Rebecca's view later on and see how she can make adjustments to the time that David's logs just to make sure that her team is logging the right time before they go out and invoice and bill the customer. So those are the two different ways that David can log time on the task board. Now let's move into the timesheet. And before we go there, I like to tell the story of the Friday afternoon. And you might know what I'm about to go into. It's the blank timesheet. So David comes in, logs into the timesheet, and starts rummaging through all of his meetings, emails that he sent, if he's even tracking time on them, and those couple sticky notes that are in the top drawer on his desk. So from David's perspective, he's probably just making up what he's worked. He has a general sense. Maybe he's done a little bit of time tracking, but it's a blank timesheet when he logs in on Friday. From Janice's or Rebecca's stance, when they're logging in to see the timesheets, it's blank as well, but it's blank for a different reason or a different struggle. They have to invoice their customer, and they have no clue what David has done this whole entire past week. So what we're going to look at is how David can easily log in, see what he needs to log, and get out. So here's David's timesheet. On the left-hand side is pre-filled tasks and different items that he's logging or working in Affinity Live on. And then on the right-hand side is what he's already logged. So in this example, the 4 hours that we logged from the timesheet has showed up here right on the timesheet from the task board. And it's also suggesting things that he needs to do. For example, this on-site visit with the customer where he's talking through website design with them for 1 hour today that I haven't already logged. What we're also able to proactively suggest is meetings from his calendar, as well as emails he's been sending back and forth. So we're not only connecting all the timesheets to the projects, but we're taking it one step further and suggesting what David needs to do. So David could come in here and said, you know what? I didn't go on site, but I had a really nice call. And he can log that hour from right here. What David can also do is instead of going the automated route, you may just want to add some work directly to your timesheet. Like the good old days, we can do that as well, where he can quickly look up Pluma medical devices. Or maybe we've locked it down for David. So in this case, we've completely locked down all the work that he can log because we know exactly what he's assigning to, but Rebecca and Janice would be able to do that global search and be able to log time against it. So what you see here is a Friday afternoon that is automated. It's David logging in, seeing exactly what he needs to do or what he should have done throughout the week, and log that time, get in and get out. What we're seeing is a big increase in actual people logging time because it's usability and really easy to log time, but also we're seeing more accurate time. The automated accuracy that revolves around the timesheet makes it really easy to get that time onto your invoices to eventually invoice and bill your customer. And if you are the fixed rate type or fixed bid type, then fine, the timesheet is still awesome for you to get a sense of how long your projects are taking. So that's a little bit about David, how he can easily log in, log out of the system, and actually start logging accurate time for the project managers to get a sense of where he is and what he's doing at any given time so that they can quickly invoice. And then lastly, we're going to look at Rebecca. And Rebecca's challenge is understanding where things are, what's going on, and getting those invoices out so that her company can have a positive cash flow this month. So when Rebecca logs in, she's going to look at her pre-project reports. And one of the reports that she made for Janice and herself is taking a look at Janice's projects. So she's able to see all the projects Janice is working on and a very high level how things are progressing along the budget. For the end of this week, Rebecca's going to come in and look at all the time that has been logged against this particular project and approve that time so that she can go out and invoice. Now we're able to look in this implementation around the code and look at Janice's original email that she sent David and that email he sent back, as well as some time for logging the HTML and CSS that he was working on. Now, as Rebecca, I can see, really, David, a 3-hour email? I don't think so. So she's able to come in here and actually make modifications to the time as well before it gets sent out to the customer. So this is one way to not only report and get a sense on how much time is being logged, but also be able to modify and edit time. So now Rebecca can go and approve. And the next step would be to invoice. So what you're seeing here is a very fluid and easy management and approval process with actually accurate time because David is actively using the system and logging time and keeping track of what's going on, even if it's not him, if it's Affinity Live. So let's send off this invoice. And what Rebecca can do, but we've already sent an invoice, is pull all the billing information from Jessica. And then normally would be able to see the different milestones and tasks that revolve in the invoicing. But since we can't see it here, and since I actually won't be able to show the full process anyways in Affinity Live, let's go over to a screen share and shots of how the flow of the invoicing actually works. So in the particular example I'm going to show, it's going to be more geared towards IT for an implementation of a tech service, but you can think of implementation and a web design being very similar in process. The way the Affinity Live Sync works with Xero and QuickBooks is that we sync your company and your billing contacts so that those stay in sync complete. And then it's an invoice sync where we take the general ledger codes, the line items, tax information, and the total dollar amount and sync it over to your accounting system. There in the accounting system, you can record the payment, and that is going to come back into Affinity Live. So we're seeing a full two-way sync that has really accurate invoicing because we're tracking the time correctly out of Affinity Live. Now, in our example, as we track the process, we'll look at the requirements and setups milestone as we invoice it. So in the overall large project, you can see the milestone called requirements and setups. Here it is in the project overview. And here's what it looks like on the invoice. At this time, I would also be able to select how I want to invoice. So some people like a 25% retainer or down payment on the initial project. You can do that as well by saying 25% of budget. Or in HDMZ's example, they invoice for time and materials. And you can do that as well, looking at how much I've logged within the past week or the past month before I set it out. So now that I've created the invoice, this is what it looks like in Affinity Live, and it looks very similar to the customer when you send it to them. Now we're going to hop over to the Xero side. Right when I click Save in Affinity Live, that invoice has synced over to Xero or QuickBooks. And all I do is record the payment on the Xero side, and that payment record will come back into Affinity Live. So a full two-way sync that makes it really easy to send out invoices, but also gives you the financial visibility back in Affinity Live to start comparing how much I'm getting paid versus how much effort I'm putting into projects. So now that we've looked at Rebecca, let's get to the heart of it. This is what the mission and the real reason we wake up every morning at Affinity Live is to make sure that professional services, especially digital marketing agencies, spend more time doing the work they love and spending less time doing all the manual process or the admin process that honestly isn't letting you get paid for it. But what happens is there usually is a lot of manual and a lot of admin processes that really gets in the way. And especially around email, when at the end of the day you're looking at what you did and you can't really account for much except for coding a little bit or that one little design that you did, it is really challenging to focus on the work you love when there's all this that gets in the way. And what does this look like for Affinity Live and HDMZ in 2011 before they actually came to Affinity Live when they're using all these different separate systems? It took them about 10 days to send an invoice out from the time that they completed the work. So what that meant was they weren't getting paid for the work that they were doing and that are covering their employees with their own overhead and their own payroll. Now, after they adopted Affinity Live, they brought that invoice down to 2 days to send out. So you can imagine 8 days, not a big deal for a smaller project, but when it is consistently an issue across all your projects and all of your work, it does make a big difference, especially for Rebecca looking at cash flow. So what does that mean for Rebecca? Well, this is right above her desk. What it means is she's happy about getting paid and she's getting paid on time. So how much does all of this cost and what you've seen today? PSA, which is our professional service automation and our most common product for people to go over to. Plus, which is just the basic off-the-shelf functionality, is $39 per user per month. If you want some of that automation that we showed today around team scheduling and actually putting in together a workflow for the approval and the invoice process, that would be your premium option. Or you can go the mix and match option. So you can have some of your sales team on the CRM, your projects team on the projects, and then a few of your service or backend support people on retainers and services. So you can start splitting and mixing your different user licenses across. And if you wanted to go the mix and match module, each of these would be plus $19 and premium $39. Now, there's often a question where they say, well, what if I want some people on premium, some people on plus? That's not how we work. It's either everyone is on premium and gets the benefit of the automation that's built into Affinity Live, or everyone's on plus. The same goes between choosing the PSA, the all-in-one option, or the mix and match option. You'd either have to choose one or the other. That's essentially the way that the pricing structure is broken down. And a lot of the reason around not being able to shift or move one person on one license on premium versus one on the other on plus is that Affinity Live really tries to break down the barriers and the walls between people in an organization. And we see if everyone is on one system, there's that inherent benefit of transparency and everyone working together and seeing and benefiting from automation. So that's essentially I guess the high level theoretical of how our pricing is broken down as well. So if you have any questions or if you would like to learn a little bit more about Affinity Live, you can go to affinitylive.com. Our blog is a great place for new features coming through, as well as our YouTube channel, where you'll be able to watch an in-depth video of not only projects, but also CRM, retainer services, and any other new features that are coming through the pipeline. So I thank everyone today for watching, and I hope the questions come and streaming through afterwards, and really excited to get you on board and with Affinity Live. Thank you.